Chapter 1. The Forgotten Widow. The twin sons of Tarsus for hung low in the pale orange sky, casting long shadows over the desolate refugee outpost, clinging to the edge of a scorched desert. Dust blew in, mournful gusts whispering through the makeshift tents like forgotten ghosts. The alien woman sat huddled near the edge of the compound, skeletal hands wrapped around her knees. Her eyes, once bright with the pride of a royal line, were now hollow, the pupils sunken into a face carved by starvation and grief. Her name was Sa, and she had been a wife, a mother, and a priestess on her home world, all taken from her when the Crovan Empire burned her city in a single night. Her mate Turin was executed in front of her for resisting. Her daughter Leilu vanished in chaos she hadn't eaten in 3 days. No one in the camp spared her a glance anymore. She was just another refugee, too broken to help, too far gone to save even her own kind, those who shared her species, her customs. Her tongue walked past her like she was invisible. Sa tilted her face to the wind and whispered a prayer to God she no longer believed in. Chapter 2. A stranger in rags. The human arrived without ceremony, pushing a rusted cart with one squeaky wheel. His boots were worn to the soles, his clothes patched and faded. He looked barely alive himself. The refugees eyed him with suspicion, their memories of humans shaped by tales of warriors, mercenaries, and arrogant conquerors. This one looked like none of those. He knelt beside a small alien child crying beside a torn top and handed him a flatbread wrapped in a cloth. No speeches, no demands. He kept moving when he passed Sailor. She didn't bother to lift her head, she grown used to being passed over. But the cart's squeaky wheel stopped. Silence. She opened one eye. The human was looking at her, not with pity, with recognition, as if he saw something that everyone else had missed. "Hey," he said, his voice low, cracked by the dry air. "You eaten?" She blinked, unsure she'd understood the words. It had been months since anyone had asked her anything. The man opened the flap of his satchel and pulled out a single ration bar. Faded lettering across the label read "Emergency use only." He hesitated, then he placed it in her trembling hands. "Last one," he said. "You look like you need it more than I do." Chapter 3. The taste of memory. She stared at the bar as if it were a relic from another life. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself to tear it open. The smell hit her, first nuts, dried fruit, honey, and dragged something primal from her chest. She bit into it and nearly wept. It was her first real food in days, and it had been given freely, not traded, not sold, not stolen. She looked up. "Why?" The human shrugged. "Because you're still breathing." He started to walk away, but she called out, her voice cracked, "What is your name?" He stopped, the suns framing him in a halo of dust. Cole. Chapter 4. Cole the wanderer. In the following days, Sailor learned more about the strange man who had appeared like a ghost. Cole was a war veteran from Earth, a former engineer who had fought in the siege of Vaughan, where half his unit died holding a bridge no one remembered. After the war he drifted between colonies, never staying long, never taking much. He had no family, no home, but he carried food in his bag, tools in his coat, stories in his voice. Each day he fixed something: a broken water pipe, a leaking tent, a shattered prosthetic leg. He asked for nothing in return, no currency, no favors. When asked why, he'd simply reply, "I've already taken more than I ever gave time to fix." The scales. Sailor found herself watching him more and more. Chapter 5. The fire and the song. One night a group of mercenaries came to the edge of the camp. They were looking for slaves. The guards turned a blind eye. They'd been bought off with food and fuel. The mercenaries began taking who they pleased. Sailor felt fear bloom in her chest when they came near the tent where orphan children were kept. She stood up, frail, starved, trembling, and blocked their path. A cruel-faced alien drew a shock baton move, which she didn't. He raised the baton, then he crumpled to the ground. Cole stood behind him holding a bent pipe. He said nothing, just raised his fists. The other mercenaries laughed. He Fought them anyway 3-1 then 4-1. And he didn't stop by the end. He was bleeding from his nose and mouth, but the mercenaries were broken and scattered. The children were safe when Sailor helped him sit. He winced and whispered, "Dumb idea." She smiled for the first time in months. Brave one. Chapter 6a. Spark among ashes. Word spread. Cole the human wanderer had stood for those the world had forgotten. Others began to rally. A crippled miner offered him a medkit. A traitor smuggled in food from the capital. Sailor helped organize a rotation. Meals, water distribution, shelter checks. The camp changed. Hope was contagious, so was courage, and Cole's fire had sparked it. As he healed, he and Sa talk more. She told him about Turun and Lilu, about the music of her city, where the spires hummed with the wind, and songs were passed from mother to daughter. One night as the stars burned above, she sang. Her voice cracked, broken, rusted by silence, but he listened like it was the most beautiful thing in the universe. Chapter 7. The letter and the ship. 3 weeks later, a diplomatic ship arrived, responding to distant reports of corruption and trafficking. It bore the flag of the Terran Restoration Council, and in TUR's PC's coalition rebuilding war-ravaged planets. Cole refused the invitation to leave. About work here, he said, tightening a bolt on a solar panel. But SA approached him one evening, holding a letter. It was from the capital. They had identified her daughter alive. Lulu had been rescued during the fall, taken in by a distant planet's orphanage. Sailor clutched the paper like it might vanish. "She's waiting," she whispered, tears on her cheeks. "I can go to her." Cole smiled, though something in his eyes dimmed. "Then go. I don't want to leave you." He looked away. "You've already lost too much." Chapter 8. The farewell and the promise. When she boarded the ship, Cole stood beside the other refugees, arms crossed. She walked to him and pressed something into his hand, a necklace. Her priest's charm faded and cracked too. "Remember," he held it tight. "Thank you for reminding me what people are worth." She reached up and kissed his cheek. "You gave me your last meal. I'll never forget." As the shuttle lifted, she watched the ground grow smaller and saw him standing there, already turning to help someone else fix a broken will. Epilogue. A garden in the dust. Months later, travelers passing the Tarsus refugee camp spoke of an odd garden blooming in the middle of the desert, irrigated, fed by compost and solar lines. Children ran barefoot through rows of sprouting vegetables. Songs and strange, beautiful tongues floated on the air at the center of it. All attired human in patched clothes worked the soil. He wore a necklace of old metal shaped like a teardrop, and when asked why he stayed in that forgotten corner of the galaxy, he'd just smile and say because she didn't forget.